She didn't just show up to my wedding in a white dress. She looked me in the eye on my wedding day in front of my photographer, my videographer, my entire family, and every single person I loved, and she brought up the moment I couldn't fit into a designer gown. She smiled while she said it. She made it sound like a memory between friends. But what she was really saying was that she had been waiting for years to wear what I couldn't. She had held that moment in her back pocket like ammunition, and she chose my wedding morning to finally use it. That was the moment I understood that this was never a friendship. It was a competition she'd been running for a decade while I had no idea we were even playing. It was supposed to be the most beautiful morning of Lily's life, but when Claire arrived for the bridal party photos 2 hours before the ceremony, everything changed in an instant. Claire didn't arrive quietly or apologetically. She strutted across the lawn in a full-length white beaded dress, its fabric catching the sunlight as she made her entrance like the event was centered on her. The moment she appeared, the entire atmosphere shifted. The photographer lowered her camera mid-shot. The bridesmaids fell completely silent. Lily's mother grabbed her arm instinctively, gripping it tight as though bracing for what was coming. Jen, Lily's sister, leaned close and whispered in disbelief, asking if Claire was actually being serious. But Claire just smiled, did a little spin as though modeling for a fashion shoot, and breezily explained that when she saw the dress, she simply had to have it. She assured everyone that there was no need to worry because nobody would confuse the two of them. Her dress, after all, had beadwork, and Lily's was, as she put it, plain and simple. She actually said it out loud, standing on the lawn in front of the entire wedding party on Lily's wedding day with complete confidence and zero shame. Lily told her directly that she couldn't wear white to her wedding, but Claire dismissed the concern with a wave, calling the rule outdated and insisting the dress was more of an ivory anyway. She held the fabric next to Lily's gown as though offering a comparison, as though inviting everyone to agree that hers was the finer choice. Lily's cousin Amy looked ready to physically intervene. Lily, holding herself together, told Claire she needed to change. Claire's response was immediate and unapologetic. She hadn't brought another dress because why would she? This dress was perfect. Lily was being dramatic. It was just a dress. Lily's mother stepped forward calmly and pointed out that there was a mall 5 minutes away where Claire could purchase something appropriate. Claire laughed at the suggestion. She had standards, she said, and she wasn't about to wear a mall dress to her best friend's wedding. That was when Lily drew the line clearly. If Claire wouldn't change, she couldn't stay. Claire's expression shifted for the first time, showing real surprise. She reminded Lily that she was the maid of honor, that her name was on everything, the programs, the website, all of it, as though the planning she had done entitled her to behave however she wanted. But what came next was perhaps the most revealing moment of all. Claire stepped closer to Lily and said something that had clearly been sitting beneath the surface of their friendship for years. She brought up a shopping trip where Lily had tried on a Vera Wang gown and couldn't pull it off, suggesting with a smile that she herself was simply wearing what Lily never could. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate, calculated dig about Lily's body, delivered on her wedding day in front of every person she loved. The photographer, the videographer, Lily's aunt with her phone raised, everyone witnessed it. That one sentence, dressed up as casual memory, exposed exactly what their friendship had really been built on all along. After Claire's cruel comment about the Vera Wang dress hung in the air, Lily didn't hesitate. She told Claire to get out, to leave the property immediately, that she was no longer part of the wedding. Claire's face shifted from smug to stunned in seconds, and she looked around at the group expecting someone to step in and defend her, to tell Lily she was overreacting, to restore the social order that had always protected Claire from consequences. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The bridesmaids stood in a tight group with their arms crossed, their faces hard. The photographer and videographer kept their equipment lowered. Even the catering staff who had paused nearby didn't return to their work. They just watched. Claire tried one more time, insisting she was the maid of honor, that she had planned the bachelorette party, organized the shower, been Lily's best friend for 10 years. Lily's response was quiet and firm. Claire had shown up to her wedding in a white gown to upstage her, and that was the end of it.
Claire tried calling it insecurity, tried spinning it as Lily being threatened by a beautiful friend. Then Alex appeared with his groomsmen, having heard the commotion from across the venue. He took one look at Claire in that white dress and his face went red. He told her she needed to leave right now. Claire smiled at him, asking if the dress didn't photograph beautifully, as though charm would work where argument had failed. Alex didn't smile back. He called her behavior attention-seeking and deliberate. Claire's mask slipped further, and she accused him of being controlling, then revealed that she had tried to convince Lily to call off the wedding just 1 month earlier, framing it as looking out for her friend. Alex named it for what it was: jealousy, saying Claire had been sabotaging them from the beginning, jealous of Lily's happiness. Claire struck back by mocking Lily's department store dress, her backyard wedding, her ordinary life, saying the word ordinary like it was poison. The silence that followed was complete and devastating. Even the catering staff froze. Lily looked at her and said quietly, "There it is." That was what Claire really thought of her all along. Claire tried to walk it back, but the words were already out. Lily's father and uncle appeared, and when Claire realized she was facing both of them with no allies in sight, she pulled out her phone and threatened to post about the whole situation on social media. She held it up like a weapon, announcing she had followers who would hear about this treatment. Alex stepped forward and told her to go ahead and post whatever she wanted, because every single person at that venue had witnessed exactly what she did and said, and the truth would speak for itself. Then the wedding coordinator, Adriana, appeared from the side entrance in her professional black dress with her clipboard, stopped in front of Claire, and told her quietly that if she didn't leave on her own in the next 2 minutes, venue security would escort her out. Claire stared at her, laughed nervously, and said the venue staff was taking sides. Adriana simply looked at her watch and said Claire now had 1 minute and 45 seconds. It was over.
Claire left, but not without making it theatrical until the very last moment. She turned back one final time before reaching the parking lot and told Lily that she would regret throwing away their friendship over her own insecurity, and that someday she would realize Claire was just trying to look her best. Her voice cracked slightly on those last words, which might have worked on Lily in another time, on another day, in a version of their friendship that hadn't just been stripped bare in front of everyone. But Lily looked right at her and said clearly that their friendship had ended the moment Claire put on that dress, and that she had been showing Lily who she really was for years. Lily told her she had finally understood that Claire never wanted her to be happy if it meant Lily might outshine her in any way. Claire's eyes went wet, but Lily didn't feel sorry. She watched Claire walk across the lawn, her white dress dragging through the grass, picking up green stains along the hem as she went. There was something almost poetic about it. The dress that was supposed to be her triumph was now stained and ruined, just like the friendship it had finally broken open. Lily felt relief and grief hitting her simultaneously. Relief that it was over, grief that 10 years had come to this. Her sister Jen wrapped an arm around her shoulders and reminded her that she was getting married in 90 minutes, and nothing that just happened was going to stop that. They walked together back into the venue, across the lawn, and into the cool quiet of the bridal suite. Lily's mother sat her down in front of the mirror and gently began repairing her makeup, dabbing away the mascara that had smudged from angry tears. While she worked, she told Lily about a toxic friend she had cut off before her own wedding, someone who had tried to sabotage the day in small ways, someone who couldn't handle watching another person be happy. She said some people simply can't tolerate other people's joy, and Claire had proven she was one of them. Lily asked if her mother ever regretted cutting that friend off. Her mother said never, not even once. Jen came in carrying a shopping bag and reported that she had personally walked Claire's belongings to her car and stood there watching until Claire's car left the parking lot and turned onto the main road. She said Claire had been crying and insisting it was all a misunderstanding, but Jen hadn't responded to any of it. She had just pointed to the car and waited. Caitlin and Mila arrived next and wrapped Lily in hugs. Mila admitted she had wanted to call out Claire's behavior for years, but hadn't wanted to cause problems in the group. She said Claire always made comments that seemed like jokes but weren't, and competed over absolutely everything. Lily asked why nobody ever said anything, and Mila looked guilty. She explained that they all talked about it among themselves, but assumed Lily could see it too, and was choosing to stay friends anyway. Hearing that made Lily feel foolish for not seeing it sooner, but also strangely relieved that she hadn't imagined any of it.
With her makeup repaired and her family gathered around her, Lily had roughly 40 minutes before the ceremony was supposed to begin. The wedding coordinator, Adriana, knocked and came in with her clipboard, all calm efficiency, and asked if any adjustments were needed to the ceremony now that the maid of honor had changed. Jen spoke up immediately, saying she knew all of Claire's parts because she had helped plan them and was ready to step in so smoothly that guests would barely notice the switch. Adriana made her notes, confirmed the timeline was still intact, and left to manage the rest of the venue. One by one, the others filtered out to take their positions, leaving Lily alone in the bridal suite for a few quiet minutes. She stood up and walked to the full-length mirror in the corner. Her dress was beautiful. Her hair and makeup were perfect. She looked at her reflection and reminded herself what this day was actually about. Not Claire, not the confrontation on the lawn, not the social media threats, but the person waiting for her at the altar. She took slow, deep breaths and felt herself settling. There was a knock, and her cousin Amy came in to warn her that several guests had seen the confrontation and were confused about why the maid of honor wasn't around. Lily decided Jen should make a brief announcement before the ceremony, something vague but honest about a change in the wedding party due to personal reasons. Amy agreed and went to find Jen. Then Alex appeared in the doorway in his tux, looking worried. He asked for just a minute and stepped in to pull Lily into a tight hug right there in the doorway. He said he was sorry for not seeing how toxic Claire was sooner, and that he should have pushed harder the month before when Claire had tried to talk Lily out of marrying him. Lily told him about the Vera Wang comment, explained how Claire had been making subtle digs about her body and her choices throughout their entire friendship. Alex's jaw tightened. He was quiet for a moment, then said he was glad she was gone because Lily deserved friends who celebrated her instead of competing with her. He kissed her forehead and left to take his place. Lily sat back down, drank some water, and felt the last of the tension beginning to ease. When the doors opened and the music started, something shifted completely. Walking down the aisle on her father's arm, Lily could see Alex at the altar with the biggest smile she had ever seen on his face, and everything else simply fell away. She didn't think about Claire or the confrontation or the social media threat or any of it. Jen stood in the spot where Claire was supposed to be and looked genuinely uncomplicated happy for them. During the vows, Lily felt overwhelming gratitude that she had stood up for herself that morning. She was fully present for every word, every promise, every moment. Alex's voice cracked with emotion when he spoke his vows. They exchanged rings, the minister pronounced them married, and Lily walked back down the aisle as someone's wife, finally free.
The reception began with music and laughter, and guests seemed to be genuinely enjoying themselves, but Lily noticed people occasionally glancing at their phones or whispering in small clusters. She assumed it was just the usual photo sharing that happened at weddings, but then Mila appeared at her side and quietly held up her phone. Claire had posted on social media. The post claimed she had been uninvited from the wedding for looking too good. She called Lily an insecure bridezilla who couldn't handle having a beautiful friend standing next to her. Lily's stomach dropped. She showed Alex and he read it carefully, then reminded her that everyone at their wedding had witnessed what actually happened and suggested they ignore it for the night and deal with it tomorrow if needed. He was right, and Lily put her phone down and focused on dancing with him. But the posts kept coming throughout dinner service. By the time the first course arrived, Claire had posted old photos of them together from college, from birthdays, from trips, all with captions about betrayal and fake friends. One post claimed Lily had thrown away 10 years of friendship out of jealousy. Another said Lily had been planning to kick Claire out all along because Alex never liked her. Caitlin, who worked as a social media manager professionally, offered to monitor everything and document it all in case it was needed later. Lily handed over her phone with relief.
Between courses, 3 separate guests came over to say they were glad Lily had removed Claire from the wedding party. Her college roommate whispered that she had always found Claire mean but never knew how to say it. Each person who approached seemed genuinely supportive, which helped Lily feel less crazy about the scene that had unfolded. Then Alex's best man Harvey stood and gave his toast. He spoke about watching Alex grow into an amazing person and finding the right partner, someone who supported him through challenges. He made a subtle but unmistakable comment about surrounding yourself with people who genuinely want you to succeed, and several guests nodded and exchanged knowing looks. Jen gave the maid of honor speech next, talking about watching Lily grow from someone shy and afraid to speak up into a woman who set boundaries with people who didn't treat her right. The room clapped loudly and some guests wiped their eyes. Lily got up to hug Jen while everyone was still applauding. Later in the evening, Lily posted one simple, factual statement on social media with Sloane's photograph showing both dresses side by side. She kept it short and unemotional. Claire wore a white gown to the wedding despite being asked to change, made hurtful comments about Lily's appearance, and was asked to leave. The image made the words unnecessary. Within minutes, comments flooded in from high school friends, college friends, work colleagues, and people who knew Claire personally, all expressing shock and support. Several people who knew Claire said they weren't surprised by her behavior because she had always been competitive and mean. The response was overwhelming and mostly in Lily's favor, which didn't erase the ache of what had happened, but made it feel less like she had done something wrong by standing up for herself.
Near the end of the reception, as the music slowed and guests began to tire, a woman Lily hadn't spoken to in years crossed the pavilion to find her. They had been close in college but lost touch after graduation, and her approach felt cautious, like she wasn't sure how her words would land. She told Lily she was sorry for not saying anything sooner. She explained that back in college, Claire used to make mean comments about Lily whenever she wasn't around, always delivered with a big smile as though they were jokes, but everyone who witnessed them could tell they came from jealousy. Claire would point out Lily's clothes, her grades, the guys she dated, and find subtle ways to make them sound worse than they were. Lily's stomach felt heavy absorbing this information on her wedding night. But before she could fully respond, 2 more college friends appeared, as though they had been waiting nearby for the right moment. Both said they'd witnessed the same pattern, years of subtle put-downs disguised as friendship. One remembered Claire telling people at a party that Lily only got her first job because her father knew someone at the company, which wasn't true. The other recalled Claire making jokes about Lily's weight at group dinners, always framed as concern for her health, but clearly designed to make her feel bad. They talked about how Claire competed over everything: test scores, relationships, vacation destinations. They admitted they should have said something years ago instead of staying silent to avoid drama, and they apologized for it. Lily thanked them for finally telling her the truth, even though it stung deeply. Then the DJ announced the last song, and everyone gathered outside for the sparkler send-off. Staff handed out long sparklers to all the guests and lit them in the darkness as Alex and Lily stood at the top of the pavilion steps. The bright white light flickered down both sides of the walkway, and everyone cheered as the couple walked between the 2 glowing lines. Lily felt the heat from the sparklers on her skin and smelled the sharp smoke they made. They reached Alex's car at the end and turned to wave at everyone before getting in. The drive to the hotel near the airport was quiet at first. Then, about halfway there, everything that had happened since morning hit Lily all at once, and she started crying. Not quietly, but in big, uncontrolled sobs that shook her whole body. Alex pulled into the parking lot, turned off the engine, and simply stayed there with her, letting her cry without trying to make her stop or tell her everything was fine. They eventually went up to their room, where Alex helped her out of her dress with its dozens of tiny buttons. She put on comfortable pajamas and sat on the edge of the bed. Alex sat beside her, arm around her shoulders, and told her she was allowed to feel sad about losing her best friend, even if that friend had been toxic and treated her badly. He said real friends don't show up to your wedding in a white dress to make themselves look better than you, and real friends don't spend years making mean comments about your body. He held her and let her process everything without rushing her through it. They flew to Hawaii the next morning for their honeymoon, and for the first few days, it was everything Lily had needed. Beaches, snorkeling, good food, warm air, the ocean stretching endlessly from the window of their resort room. But even surrounded by all of it, Lily found herself reaching for her phone when Alex stepped away, scrolling through comments on her wedding post, checking to see what Claire might be saying now, reading messages from people she hadn't heard from in years who were sharing their own stories about Claire's behavior. She knew she should stop. She told herself every time that it would be the last check. It never was. On the third day, Alex noticed her looking at her phone under a beach towel and gently suggested they talk about it instead of letting it eat at her quietly all week. That evening, they ordered room service and sat on the balcony watching the sunset, and Lily told him everything she had been thinking and feeling since the wedding. She admitted she couldn't stop checking social media even though she knew it wasn't helping. She told him she felt guilty about ruining Claire's reputation, even though Claire had brought it entirely on herself. Alex asked why she felt responsible for protecting someone who had treated her badly for years, and Lily didn't have an easy answer. Maybe, she said, because they had been friends for a decade and she still cared in spite of everything. Alex helped her see clearly that she had a people-pleasing habit that had allowed Claire to manipulate her throughout their entire friendship. He said she hadn't ruined anything. She had simply stopped shielding Claire from the consequences of her own choices. Claire chose to wear that dress. Claire chose to make those comments. Claire chose to post lies on social media. Those were Claire's decisions and Claire's consequences. Lily sat with that perspective for a long time. She had spent years making excuses for Claire's cruelty and working to keep the peace instead of standing up for herself, and old habits don't dissolve in a week just because you finally saw them clearly. Midway through the honeymoon, Caitlin sent a message saying Claire had deleted all her posts about the wedding and made her accounts private. She was getting massive backlash, including from her own family members who had reached out to tell her directly that her behavior was wrong and unacceptable. The whole strategy had backfired, and Claire could no longer control the narrative. Lily showed the message to Alex and felt that complicated mixture again. Relief that people knew the truth, and sadness that a 10-year friendship had ended in such public collapse. Alex looked at her and said the friendship was already over before the wedding day. The ceremony had just made it impossible to keep pretending otherwise. He said she had been grieving the loss of this friendship for a long time without fully realizing it, that every small cruelty and every moment of undermining had been chipping away at it for years. She knew he was right. They sat on the balcony for a long time after that, not needing to fill the silence, just watching the water. When they landed back home, exhausted and jet-lagged, they found a massive flower arrangement sitting on their doorstep. White lilies and roses, easily 3 feet tall. The card was from Claire's parents. They wrote that they were horrified when they heard what their daughter had done at the wedding, that they had raised her better than that, and that they completely understood if Lily never wanted to speak to Claire again. The apology felt genuine and sad, like people embarrassed by something they hadn't been able to prevent. They mentioned they had always tried to teach Claire to be happy for others, but somewhere she had become bitter and competitive. It was strange to feel validated by Claire's own parents, but also deeply sad that things had deteriorated far enough for them to feel the need to write a letter. Life resumed its normal rhythm, and Lily found herself in therapy within the week, sitting across from her therapist and walking through the full story from start to finish. As she described specific examples of Claire's behavior spanning years, the mean comments, the competitions, the attempts to sabotage the engagement, her therapist helped her see the pattern clearly. Claire would push a boundary, hurt Lily, and then apologize just enough to keep her engaged without actually changing anything. It was a cycle Lily had lived inside for a decade without naming it. Her therapist pointed out that Claire's email apology, which had arrived in Lily's inbox within days of returning home, came only after the social media posts backfired and people turned against Claire publicly, not because Claire genuinely understood how her actions caused harm. That distinction mattered. Lily sat with her laptop that evening and wrote back. She told Claire she needed space and wasn't ready to meet or talk. She explained that the wedding had been the final obvious proof of years of subtle toxicity she had been choosing to ignore. She said she had spent their entire friendship walking on eggshells around Claire's criticism and one-upmanship, and she was done making excuses for it.
She hoped Claire would find help for whatever drove her to behave that way, but protecting her own peace and mental health had to come first. She hit send before she could second-guess it and immediately felt lighter, the way you feel after finally putting down something you didn't realize you'd been carrying. Less than 2 hours later, Claire replied. The subject line was a single word, "really," and the email that followed was designed entirely to induce guilt. Claire called it a grudge over one mistake, said real friends forgive each other, accused Lily of being dramatic and hurtful for refusing to meet. She used phrases carefully chosen to twist the situation, things like, "after everything we've been through," and "I thought you were better than this." She ended by warning Lily not to let it be too late to fix things between them. Lily read it twice, felt the familiar pull to respond and explain herself, then remembered exactly what her therapist had said about Claire's pattern. This email was the pattern continuing. The apology hadn't worked, so now came the guilt. Lily clicked block on Claire's email address and then blocked her phone number. It felt scary and final and completely necessary.
With Claire fully blocked and the boundary firmly in place, Lily began making a deliberate effort to invest in the friendships that had shown up for her. She spent more time with Jen, Caitlin, and Mila, meeting for coffee, going to movies, having dinner at each other's apartments, and was struck again and again by how easy and uncomplicated it felt. Nobody criticized her outfit choices or made comments about her weight. Nobody turned every conversation into a silent competition about who had the better job, the nicer apartment, the more impressive life. Caitlin told her about work stress, and Lily listened without judgment. Mila talked about a difficult relationship, and they all gave honest advice without making it about themselves. Jen spent a Saturday helping reorganize Lily's apartment and never once suggested she should buy nicer furniture or move somewhere better. The contrast with Claire was so stark it was almost disorienting. Lily started noticing how much mental energy had been quietly consumed by managing Claire's feelings and anticipating her reactions. When she posted photos of herself and Alex at a restaurant, she no longer felt anxious waiting for a backhanded comment about the food or the venue. When she shared news of a small promotion at work, she didn't brace for Claire's competing announcement or her subtle questioning of whether the role was really that significant. When she bought a dress she liked, she didn't hear Claire's voice in her head critiquing the fit or the price. That constant internal noise, which she had grown so used to that she'd stopped hearing it as noise, was simply gone. About 3 months after the wedding, a girl named Sarah, who Lily barely knew, reached out to say that Claire had been spreading a version of events where Lily was the villain, a jealous bridezilla who couldn't handle having a beautiful friend, and that she had initially believed Claire because she didn't know Lily well. But then she started noticing that Claire seemed to have drama with nearly everyone in her orbit, that her stories never quite added up, that she consistently positioned herself as the victim of other people's jealousy or insecurity. After seeing Lily's post and speaking to mutual acquaintances, Sarah chose to distance herself from Claire and wanted Lily to know she saw through the lies. Lily felt momentarily angry hearing Claire was still rewriting the story, but Alex reminded her that anyone who actually knew her wouldn't believe Claire's version, and anyone who did without asking for her side wasn't someone she needed. Thanksgiving arrived, and for the first time in years, their friend group gathering felt genuinely relaxed. Everyone brought food they wanted to make, played games without anyone controlling the energy of the room, and told stories without walking on eggshells. Mila said halfway through the evening that it was the most fun Friendsgiving they'd had in years. Nobody said Claire's name, but everyone knew what had changed. And a few weeks later, when Lily bumped into Claire's aunt at the grocery store and braced for awkwardness, the woman smiled warmly, apologized for Claire's behavior, and said the family had recognized Claire's jealousy issues for years, but Claire always refused to take responsibility. She told Lily she understood completely why she had cut contact and didn't blame her at all. Walking out to the parking lot afterward, Lily felt something she hadn't expected, not triumph, but a quiet, settled peace.
A year after the wedding, Jen came over with a bottle of wine and suggested it was finally time to go through all the wedding photos. Lily had been avoiding them because she knew Claire appeared in the early shots, and she wasn't sure she was ready to see that morning frozen in images. But Jen sat beside her on the couch, opened the laptop, and clicked through the first dozen photographs together. There was Claire in the white dress during the confrontation, her expression carrying all that confident self-satisfaction that Lily now recognized for what it had always been: performance covering insecurity. It made Lily's stomach tighten briefly. But then the photos moved past the confrontation and into the ceremony, the reception, the dancing, and something unexpected became immediately obvious. Everyone in those later photographs looked different. The bridesmaids were laughing with their whole faces. Her parents looked calm and genuinely joyful. Alex's groomsmen were relaxed and natural. The guests at the tables were leaning into each other with ease. Even Lily herself, in the ceremony photos, looked like someone fully present in her own life rather than braced for something. The photographer had captured real happiness because that was what was actually there once the source of tension had walked out across the lawn and driven away. Looking at those two sets of photos side by side, the tightly wound earlier shots and the open, glowing later ones, made something clear that no amount of reflection had quite managed to make concrete before. Claire's presence had been dimming the room for years, so gradually that nobody noticed until it was finally completely gone. Over the following months, a message arrived from a girl Lily barely knew who had seen Claire at a birthday party doing essentially the same thing, arriving in an outfit clearly designed to outshine the guest of honor, making comments all night about looking better than everyone there. She said that because she had seen Lily's wedding posts and understood the pattern, she recognized what was happening immediately and set a boundary right away instead of tolerating it or making excuses. She thanked Lily for being brave enough to share her experience publicly, because it gave her permission to protect herself too. Reading that message, Lily realized that standing up for herself in front of everyone, even though it was frightening and messy and very, very public, might have helped other people recognize the same patterns in their own lives. The mess had served a purpose larger than her own wedding drama. She typed back a long, warm reply. 6 months into married life, the mental space that Claire used to fill had become something Lily could barely describe to people who hadn't experienced it: a kind of lightness, an absence of low-grade dread, the ability to share good news without rehearsing how to manage someone else's reaction to it. She and Alex cooked dinner together, watched television, made plans for the future, and she would sometimes go entire weeks without thinking about Claire at all. When the thought did come, it arrived without the old ache, just a clear-eyed acknowledgement that she had made the right call, that protecting her happiness was worth the discomfort of the conflict, and that the version of herself who had spent a decade tolerating cruelty to preserve the peace had finally been replaced by someone who understood her own value. Real friendship, she had learned, didn't require you to make yourself smaller to keep the other person comfortable. The people around her now simply showed up. They cheered for her. They didn't need her to dim her light so theirs could seem brighter. That was the thing Claire's white dress had accidentally given her, the absolute, undeniable, finally visible proof of what she had always deserved but never known to demand.